In Chapter 7, we read about ethics and social responsibility in business. This really seems to be a very growing area, I believe, in business. It sort of goes along with a lot of what we did in our most recent reactive video in regards to the white collar crime and really making ethical decisions and bringing ethics into the business place when making decisions. So I think that this chapter sort of came at just the right time. Business ethics is really, I think, looking like a very growing area, growing field. Business ethics is described as the conduct related to business activity and values of what makes things good and bad. It's the study of moral practices of the firms that play an important role in shaping the world. I think that ethics can be involved in every part of our lives and being, and certainly business is not exempt to that ethical conduct. Basically, if a business decision will affect the quality of other people's lives, then ethics is involved. This is one of the reasons why I believe a majority of us in our reactive videos talked about the fact that we need to keep the customers and other people at the forefront of decision making when we are making those types of decisions, making sure that we're training people to realize that the decisions that they are making and choices that they are making are affecting other people's lives. So the chapter also talked a bit about social responsibility. And I think what is interesting is that given the political influence that people are expecting certain standards from everyone, especially businesses. And with those political influences, that has translated into actual governmental regulations as far as, being ethically responsible and socially responsible for decisions that your particular company is making. There was discussion about the various theories of ethical thought, whether they're consequential, which means having to be judged whether they're good or bad based on the acts that have achieved their desired results, whether they're deontological theories. The theory is that kind of a do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the humanistic theory is that actions are evaluated as good or bad, depending on whether they contribute to improving inherent human capacities such as intelligence, wisdom, and self-restraint. The chapter further talks about codes of ethics, and I think, though I have heard about this, I don't think that I ever really realized that there are various codes, whether they are individual, corporate, industrial, or professional. And I do know that there is an organization which deals with the education of young children, and there is a code of ethics and a code of conduct. However, I think that differs from something as more I think that's more of like an industry code of ethics as opposed to a professional code of ethics such as the AICPA, the ASCLU, or the American Bar Association have. Because in those situations, individuals can be held to that standard within their profession. So, for instance, if an attorney is making a decision that may not necessarily be against the law, but is against the particular a particular area within the bar association, they can actually be disbarred. So that they would no longer be a member of that bar association. So I think that differs a little bit greatly from the industry codes of ethics, where their sort of do's and don'ts for a particular industry or expectations of behavior from a particular industry. Moving ahead to chapter 8, we really dove into international business and the dimensions of international business. I'm not sure that I ever realized how complex international business really is. There's so many different facets to consider. There's so many different options of how you can be involved in business internationally. And, there's certain risk levels based on different options. So it I found this chapter extremely informative, complex. Um, there are definitely, various dimensions that the chapter talks about. Political, what is the political environment of those areas that you are trying to do business in? What are the economic dimensions of that environment that you're trying to do business in? Are there cultural limitations? What is the kind of corruption and trade legal dimensions? So there are certainly a lot of different considerations when trying to go into an international business opportunity. So I think that all of those things are very important to consider as a company is considering engaging in kind of foreign or international business. And what risks, do the risks outweigh the potential positives? Knowing the various different organizations that may be impactful based on the area that you're trying to do business in. And I think that these are all, especially in our global environment, and this large world becoming smaller and smaller each day, I definitely think that these are things to consider. Ways in which the disputes, which evidently probably will arise in some way, shape, or form, and what ways that those will be addressed, making sure that there is a clause within a contract that is created to be sure that there are ways agreed upon ahead of time to settle disputes. The book talks about the two most common being arbitration and litigation. Certainly, arbitration is probably the most chosen choice because it's the least public. It can be resolved in the quickest manner. Those clauses can be included in contracts to stipulate what law will govern, what language will be used, how the expenses of the arbitration will be shared between the parties, where or when that will take place, and hopefully will include a waiver of judicial review by both parties. The other option that is most common is litigation, which is basically a lawsuit. And I think most of us realize that those things can be extremely costly and can drag out for a very long period of time, which probably is not in the best interest of any particular company. So I do think that this chapter was informative. I think it's a lot of information to take in. I don't really think that I realized the huge dynamic of what it means to be involved in international business. I was watching a soccer game, and on the board along the side came this ad for Monster drinks, basically saying that it's like the number one drink in the U.S. and it's now available worldwide. And after reading this chapter, I thought, okay, so how did it become available worldwide? What steps did they take to make that happen? Are there clauses within their contracts? And it made me really think a little bit more about what that means and how did they get to be in that kind of worldwide environment. So I think as a business, it's important to cover all the bases. I think if I was a business, I would probably take a less risky approach, and probably try to deal with a company who helps a variety of people distribute through a different country. I'm not necessarily a risk taker, so having large amounts of capital available and all of those requirements to do it independently, I think would probably be too risky for me. Um, but certainly there are corporations that do that every day. So I found this chapter very interesting. May not necessarily be something that I would need going forward in the future, but it certainly is information to ponder and take in. Thank you.